On the cutting edge of anomaly research, you are about to experience The Evidence with your host, 3D pioneer and image analyst with Mars X3D, E.W. Gannett.
Well, hi there, and welcome to episode 112 of The Evidence. This is your buddy Dave over at Mars X3D. And if you're new to the channel, all you have to do is go to our intro page for the channel, and there's a quick tutorial, a video tutorial, which will show you how to do the very simple X3D technique. And believe me, when people really find out how super easy it is, they're delighted and thrilled, and I think you will be too. Hey, have you gotten a copy of the book yet? Let me tell you a little something about Martian archaeology. You see, I could have fluffed this book up. I could have made it hundreds of pages, which I couldn't afford to have produced, but that's besides the point. There's no fluff in it. What I've done, instead of opting for more pages, is I've opted for very expensive paper and 24 absolutely jaw-dropping anomalies. The types of things that your non-believing and skeptic friends, when they look at, especially if they learn X3D, it'll blow their minds. And I think it'll blow your mind too. The book comes complete with viewing tutorials and links to all of the images and descriptions of everything. And it's really actually the first book of its kind. There has never been a book on Martian archaeology in stereographic X3D before. So this is the first. And right now I am signing every book that goes out the door. So you want to grab one of those before it's too late. You'll see the link right below this video. Anyway, we have a lot of very interesting anomalies that have been pointed out by various colleagues of mine. And in fact, I don't think there's anything that I found this week that's kind of rare. It's usually mostly my stuff, but not this week. But I like to give other people the center stage and showcase what researchers like Laszlo Shabalix and Sarah Runcie and San Kotviks and others are doing. So why don't we dive in and have a look at what they've shown us this past week. Let's start out with an intriguing find by my Hungarian friend, Laszlo Shabalix. I'm not at all familiar with the work of the person who did this G-pen, but it looks like decent processing. I guess you already know that if it isn't by Neville Thompson or Neil Spence, I get a little queasy, but hey, you gotta take chances once in a while, right? Anyway, there it is, inside the blue target. Let's get closer. This looks like a plate with stiffeners welded to it. Is it just erosion? Of course it could be. But let's take a quick inventory of what's in front of our eyes. We can't tell if the plate itself has square corners or rounded corners due to its position in the sand. But the plate is symmetrical, being the same width throughout. It also gives the impression of being a uniform thickness, although that certainly is possible in sedimentary rocks. Then you have those two pointed ribs that look like typical reinforcing stiffeners applied to sheet metal. The plate above it, buried in the rock, well, we'll reserve judgment on that for the time being. But now take a look above and just to the right of the rib in the middle. Do you see that nice little circular plate sticking out? I can't help but get the impression that this is a battered and corroded piece of metalwork, half embedded in mud fossil. API celebrated its 11th anniversary on Mars by imaging Santa Maria crater, located within the Meridiani Planum region, for those of you taking notes. This color image was rendered by Pam Cass, and Sarah Runcie recently pointed out something strange in the background. You can see it there inside the yellow target. And by the way, people are really quick to call that bluish sand in the background an ocean or inland sea, which simply isn't the case. Sorry about that. It is interesting to note that on the southeast portion of the rim, the crater also possesses a literal gold mine, well, for scientists anyway, a literal gold mine of hydrated mineral deposits. These minerals are indicative of the past flow of liquid water on Mars, and as we all know from 8th grade science, liquid water is an essential requirement for the formation of life. And look at that, peeking over the rim of the crater. Sure looks like a dome to me, complete with sunlight, glinting off of what might be a metallic surface. And regardless whether it's metal or not, the surface is polished smooth enough to reflect sunlight, not something you often find in naturally occurring stone. Hang on. We're going to get all blurry in just a second. I'll be the first one to agree that this is a real piece of garbage image, but necessary in my opinion to show the structure of whatever this is. Notice how the very top seems to be square, according to the way the light and shadows fall. Just below, it's obvious that the dome is spherical in shape, again based on the way light reflects off of what seems to be a rim. And below that, what might be windows, for want of a better word, along with the small vertical separator set at right angles to the rim. So what do we call this? Is it a craft, a small building of some kind, or is it just another one of those Martian miracles of wind and sand? Here's another find pointed out by Sarah Runcie from yet another GPAN creator I've never heard of, but I'm glad more people are getting into the arduous task of downloading all the tiles and processing each one from its raw formats and then stitching them all together. That's a ton of work, and I'm happy to let someone else do it. It seems to me the sharpening tool was overused a bit on this context view, but that's just me being a fussy old man, I guess. Anyway, you can see from the target area that this particular item is really very small. That's why I call it a tiny bowl analog. It does kind of look like a bowl, doesn't it? Let's go on over and take a closer look. It's a little too indistinct to make a definite call on what it might be. But let's face it, it is bowl-shaped, and it does have a thin, symmetrical rim or lip on the right. As far as the other markings on it, well, they're evocative but inconclusive. This could well be a small bit of eroded rock, or it could be a bowl. A tiny one. This is a strange one from researcher San Kotvix, taken with Curiosity's ASCAMs. Inside the target area, we have 3 tiny dots. It's important for you to understand that the dots only appear in the right camera, which would be on your left in X3D. I have arbitrarily cloned them into the left image so you can see it in 3D, but their position in the z-axis is again arbitrary and may not be accurate. And make a mental note that this is Sol 3282. Notice also the object appearing on the left inside the target box. This time I only cloned the box, not the object. So this image begs the question, why do we have the dots in the right image and not in the left, given that both images were snapped only milliseconds apart? I hope to answer this in just a moment. First of all, let's zoom in on the dots on the right. Now, here again, I've cloned the dots from the right image into the left image to give you a sense of their position, as if they are actually in the sky. And again, I've placed them in an arbitrary position on the Z or depth axis to give you an idea of how it might look in person. But they might be specks on the lens, or maybe airborne fragments from a gust of wind, or just possibly birds or a couple of craft zipping by. Here is exactly the same panorama taken the day before on Sol 3281. If the spots on the right in the first picture we looked at were on the lens, they would more than likely be visible in this one as well. But they're not. And think of this. If it was a gust of wind driving some debris into the air, they would appear in both cameras. But they don't. So what about that sky object on the left? I've zoomed in and cloned it into the left image. As you can see, it appears to be a data glitch, not something in the air and not something on the camera lens. If it's a data glitch, it should appear in each of the images, and it does. Here's the same image from the day after, that is, Sol 3283. And sure enough, the data glitch is there, even though it's hard to see. You'll have to get your magnifier happening to see it, but it's there, and it's a data glitch. So that brings us back to Sol 3282 and the three objects which seem to be in the sky. They're not data glitches. They're not dust on the lens. They're not airborne debris. And they only appear in the right camera. So that means only one thing in my mind. They were in the sky and moving extremely fast. So fast, in fact, that even though the images were taken only milliseconds apart, they only registered in the right camera. Them some pretty quick birds, wouldn't you say? This seems to be Sarah's day today. This is a classic anomaly, pointed out by any number of researchers back in the early days of curiosity. Sarah brought it to our attention again just the other day, and I thought you might want to have a look at it. I'm calling this the Weird Walker, and as usual, it's right on the edge of the image, but you can still see it well enough if you follow the arrow. And there it is, kind of a cross between a tropical fish, an anteater, and an insect. I mean, it seems to have 6 legs, if that's what they are. And those of you who have been with me a while have already noticed how our little friend is totally different from the surrounding geology. Could it be just a very strange bit of erosion? Sure, that's the fallback position for anybody not wanting to be bothered with thinking about it. But it sure gives the impression of being poised right on the edge of the sand, maybe heading for the shadows under the ridge. You know, there was a glitch with shorturls, so the ones in the images, those are no good. The real links are down below in the video description. And if you saw something you liked, please consider giving this video a thumbs up. And would you like to support this work? Please think about getting your own signed copy of Martian Archaeology. I'd be thrilled to put one in the mail to you. This is your buddy Dave, over at Mars X3D. Be well.